welcome to the Tearsheet podcast, where we explore financial services together with an eye on technology, innovation, emerging models, and changing expectations. I'm Tearsheet Editor-in-Chief, Zach Miller. And joining me here today is Kara Parkey, Head of Strategic Accounts at Coast. Welcome, Kara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And you were previously on the board of the Association of Financial Technology, Chief of Staff at MX, your CPA by profession, and an early employee at Built. And so it's not by chance that you're here working for a company that creates interactive, bespoke API demos used by quite a few fintechs in the industry, right?
Yeah, quite a few. I think we've got close to 100 clients now, probably 85 in the fintech space.
Yeah, and what was pretty cool is as I was preparing for the interview, just going to the homepage and seeing just the logos there of the fintech companies. You know, they're what I estimate some of the best in the industry. So maybe you can start by giving us elevator pitch for what Coast does, and then I'd like to talk a little bit more about the API economy.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me again, Kara Parkey. I'm about almost a year in at Coast. We essentially, at a high level, visually simplify the complexity of API products. So think about being able to empower people to show what your APIs can power, interact with a visual representation of that on the left-hand side of the screen, and then see your APIs firing live on the right-hand side, just really marrying that journey for technical and non-technical buyers.
And are those live demos using the prospects' real data and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we can do live data or live API calls. We can also mock them if you want it to look very live, and Coast has dynamic logic in the background that can make it look live, and we can not have to hit production environments, but absolutely love using live API calls. It really is powerful.
So I have to say, this is going back 10 years ago. I had my previous company invested in a firm that basically created safe sandboxing for API economy type companies, primarily targeting banks. But it was all behind the scenes. It was all so hard to set up, and it was all it took so long just to get to the point where you could get the data into the sandbox. So maybe you could talk about some of the challenges. How would people do this before? How would they demo stuff before you guys came along?
Totally. It's a great question. And honestly, part of my origin story as to how I found Coast. I've been a non-technical, I'm not a developer, been a non-technical seller or advocate for APIs and API companies my entire career. And I met Coast seeing them demo my own MX APIs in Coast. And I just remember seeing it and thought, wow, I understand this product so much better. I think the problem, selling is hard enough in general. Selling an API is exceptionally difficult because you really, a lot of times you're putting the homework on the buyer to try to imagine what they can power or what they can embed from your product into their own. And so, the way it's done before is, like you mentioned, lots of solutions consultants spinning up custom demos. It's a lot of static PowerPoints or screenshots of what
I was going to say, here's your data, but it's in a static PowerPoint. Yeah.
Exactly. So very static. It's a combination usually of a Figma prototype or a PowerPoint presentation, and then after the call, sending static Postman documentation over and saying here you go. And what we do is really allow them to see the APIs working live and visualize what it could look like in their environment. So it's huge for the embedded technology ecosystem that we're more and more kind of coming into, especially in light of open banking.
It's so funny because you mentioned that you were, I guess, on the buyer side, having met Coast and seeing the value proposition there. And when I read through your bio, I figured that must have happened at some point because MX, that's what you guys were peddling is APIs. So So how do these API demos differ, I guess, from traditional product demonstrations or technical documentation?
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned earlier, they're live. And so think about kind of the left-hand side of the screen being the art of the possible, like what can be built. And then on the right-hand side, them firing, live. So if it's a webhook that's coming in, or say you make a request for account onboarding, you can see what happens when that takes place. So there's no more kind of workflows or static lucid charts of, where data is flowing. You can see exactly when I hit this button, this is what happens. And it's in a nice isolated environment. The cool part about Coast too is that our demos are, the output of Coast is a unique URL. So it all kind of lives in this unique branded, personalized experience. If you're going to pitch to Walmart, it'll look like Walmart's experience, and you can interact with it live, in this URL.
And why do you think that's particularly appealing to like fintech companies? You mentioned 80% of the companies are fintech
Yeah,
companies?
about roughly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so much in fintech, our ecosystem is becoming more and more. It was so many API first companies, so many people trying to work together and partner on their solutions. I mean, it's embedded technology. You have fraud companies or onboarding companies or data enhancement. It's not everybody is selling SaaS platforms, right, with the front end. And so what's very cool, and I see it almost on every call we have, we'll show a demo, and the line that most people use is, it's so cool seeing APIs come to life, right? So you're going to a company's developer documentation and it's just lines and lines of code. What's very cool about Coast is that you bring those APIs to life and can see what this is going to look like in an embedded scenario.
Can you give an example, like a specific example of how an interactive API demo changed a potential client's engagement or conversion process?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great case study, and I can send you the links, but I'll probably get the actual percentage wrong, but we did a case study with Sardine. Are you familiar with Sardine? They were an early client of ours.
Sure.
Collapsing their sales cycle, kind of time to value by 25%, just in terms of people grasping what they were, able to empower. It's also a lot of engineering time that's saved. Just because, again, typically you've got a team of account executives, maybe there's 20 account executives, there's 5 kind of product solutioning type folks on the team that will do these technical demos. Now we kind of give that team a lot more leverage, give the AEs leverage so there's not a bottleneck in technical demos. But absolutely, we have Spreedly, another client who I know shortened their sales cycle by quite a bit. And then we're really pushing, there's a big focus this year. I think a lot of folks looking to embed this technology in their developer documentation. Persona uses us in their developer documentation. So there's a lot of folks just trying to quickly get time to value, right? How fast can I appeal to both developers and executive buyers that might not know what an API is, right?
And as more financial institutions are offering direct APIs, are you finding any interest there or demand there?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't mention names yet.
Sure, I figured
but
that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was part of my thesis in even joining, just having worked with financial institutions, for the last decade. There's a huge push right now. I mean, I think with 1033, which was just last week or earlier this week, everyone's seen it coming. All the banks know that they need to have their APIs, ready and available, and have a good permissioned, plan for their consumer data. And especially with the larger banks, kind of the payments infrastructure that they all power, they know they need to kind of democratize that data. So yeah, we are looking to work with a lot of banks, very focused on helping them, increase adoption of their APIs and help them make it more scalable.
How different is the sales cycle working with a traditional financial institution versus a fintech?
Is that a trick question? Do you know the answer? Yeah, it's pretty different, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, just such a regulated industry. I will say they're getting a lot better. I mean, I think all of them, the innovation. I just left Money 2020, and it really is encouraging just even to see the change in the pace. It's still slower than working with the fintech, certainly, but I think even as consumers, not selling into these financial institutions, we're probably grateful for it, right? There's a lot of diligence, a lot of security reviews, just highly regulated. So it takes a while, but I think we're all grateful for it.
One of the things we've been saying on the show for years really is the ability for a traditional financial institution to partner well, fast, and deeply is probably a differentiated skill set, especially as more and more partnerships will be driving part of the innovation within the traditional side of things. And Coast obviously would play a big role in that, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. And again, kind of to my earlier comment about the innovation in banks, especially over the last 5-10 years, is it's been really encouraging. I mean, you've probably seen as well, so many people from the tech side, from fintechs, are now going to work at banks, right? Like banks are trying to attract the type of talent, whether they're spinning up their own digital bank or working in their product or bringing in a lot of technologists that have been on this side. And I think that's really driving kind of the increased innovation. So that's been really great. And yeah, Coast I think really does bridge that gap. So I encourage everyone to not just see Coast as a demo tool for sales. It's really the way you show your APIs. So I mean, our most efficient and effective, enterprises are leveraging Coast all the way from product ideation, and launching this with product and engineering teams all the way through, dev docs, sales, post-sale integration guides. There's lots of use cases.
You mentioned something interesting, and something I've noticed as well is on the bank side, you're seeing more people who have experience with APIs, maybe through fintech or other technology companies. You're seeing that as well?
Totally. Oh yeah, I feel like, and it's cool. You've got Fifth Third and New Line. You've got Live Oak Bank. Like so many different banks. With Chime and all the digital banks that have kind of launched. The talent pool, I think there's so many more opportunities for folks in tech, and I think the banks know that they need that. The days of just the traditional banker, to understand where we're going, especially with embedded technology and embedded finance, it's been really helpful and very cool to see kind of the merging of traditional finance and tech come together, especially at some of these more innovative banks.
So what does the integration cycle look like for one of your clients? Like how do you get up and running on Coast? How long does that take?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great answer for that. Yeah.
How dirty and how hard is it?
Yeah. It's really, I mean, we've had clients go live in a week. We've had clients, our typical onboarding is, 30 to 60 days. But really, I mean, it's a visual representation of your API documentation. So it's not like we have to really integrate. It's importing your API documentation, and then it's a builder tool. So we train you on how to build kind of the stories you want to create, right? So depending on how fast you want to get going, we can certainly accommodate.
And how many people, I don't know if there's a usual, but how many people on the buyer side are involved in, I guess, the integration piece typically?
Usually it's just a couple. We typically have, we like to call them Coast builders. So we'll train, and that's usually solutions consultants, somebody on the go-to-market product side that wants to help with the visual aspect of it. But just a few people that want to learn how to build. And then the cool part about Coast is that then anybody in the org, once these kind of templates are built in Coast, can log in and create these API demos branded for whoever they're talking to, needing no technical skills at all, in a couple seconds. So it really takes 10 seconds to create a demo.
Awesome. And obviously our industry, people are hyper vigilant about compliance and security and stuff like that. How do you guys address those concerns?
Right. Well, my first thing I always say is kind of what I mentioned earlier, is that we really are your API documentation, just a visual representation. So we're not touching any PII. It's not like a typical, product due diligence. It's, a lot of times this is public data that you have on your website, right? We're just pairing it with kind of a visual. So, we work with some of the largest companies in the world, Twilio, Zurich Insurance. We've gone through some very diligent vendor due diligence, if I will. But we typically sail through with flying colors because it's really not that no PII or anything like that.
So that makes a lot of sense, and good for you. They don't have to do it.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah,
It's nice.
That definitely, I'm sure, was by design. But what about, so I asked you about those case studies, and you gave some ROI metrics or speed metrics. Mm-hmm. Are there tools within Coast that help your clients determine its efficacy versus like using
how their product is landing? Yeah, there are. We have some of the more unique use cases, and we're just kind of scratching the surface here. I wish I could have my co-founder on to talk through this, but we have some that are using Coast for kind of internal trainings, right? New market development, or even post-sale kind of integration. We have out-of-the-box analytics that kind of, you'd get an email the first time somebody external would open the demo, and you can see how many views, unique viewers, kind of their step-through rates. But we also play nicely, and a lot of marketing teams love us for this. We play nicely with whatever your analytics stack is. So we have some clients that have us plugged into their Google Analytics or Postdog or, Mixpanel, whatever they're using. And you can get really granular with how people are stepping through these environments. So we do, we have a lot of folks that are measuring that, especially, those who have embedded these demos in their developer documentation to see how people are interacting with the product and where they're, going to search for these APIs. Absolutely.
So you've got 1033 in the background and Coast as an enabling, like kind of opening up the ability to do more work here. Where do you see things playing out over the next few years? Like, obviously you were excited about Coast, which is why you're here. But I'm kind of curious how you see the market developing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, again, you're absolutely right. I'm very bullish on kind of the API economy. I think it was kind of our thesis, at least as a company. If you're not API first today, you will be soon. You're API second, and everyone is focused on, the world is becoming more and more embedded, right? Everyone's more and more partnerships, more and more embedded technology, more and more API first, plug and play. And that's really where I see it going is, more and more of these companies who have amazing features that could be leveraged both in our industry and others. I think there's just going to be more of a merger and marriage of a lot of these companies. Embedded is here to stay. API economy, obviously with 1033, is just going to get bigger and bigger. So we're trying to, we feel very fortunate that we started this company when we did, and are looking to kind of lead the charge there.
Of course, the cat comes in during the call. It always,
I was going to say.
if something can go wrong, it does. No, so I appreciate that. What about your goals, your personal goals? I'm talking about within the business, your team's goals. We're getting to the end of 2024 and looking, obviously, I assume you started planning for 2025 already.
Yeah.
What are your big audacious goals that you have on?
Yeah, it's a great question. Personally, I'm just enjoying exactly where I'm at. I love the early stage of a company. I love, Coast was attractive for a number of reasons. My co-founders are unbelievable. They're amazing. They're very smart, work hard. It's been an amazing environment to kind of come into. So we're just really hyper focused on growth and product and serving our customers. We just hosted a dinner at Money 2020 this week with some of our clients and prospects, and that was really the sentiment was we've created an amazing product, but it takes this ecosystem kind of telling us what they need as well. So we're very focused on kind of feedback, continuing to build the product to kind of ride this wave of the API economy. And then, yeah, you're going to see some pretty big names working with Coast in the end of 2024 and into 2025. And we're certainly focused on, the more adoption we can have with the product, the more we can grow the team, the more we can serve, startups all the way up through, as I mentioned, we've got Twilio, Zurich Insurance, other large companies. We're just trying to grow as fast as we can.
Awesome. I have some other, I guess, forward-looking questions. Feel free to answer them or not. But I guess, like you mentioned, your enjoyment of building stuff. I happen to be the same way. I like building stuff and less managing, as things mature.
Right.
But I guess the product also will begin to mature as you have more time in market. And I guess as it does that, are your plans to go deeper with the market or to go more laterally? Are there network effects by having more and more companies on the platform? I'm just kind of curious, like at a high level, even like what you think about where the product itself goes.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we're in the early innings for sure. We get product requests all the time to go, and you probably know this. If you're in the early stage, it's a mix of listening to clients and figuring out what you need to say no to focus on what is your best value. Mm-hmm. So we're certainly in that stage. We obviously have grand plans and have a roadmap for the product, but I think right now what we're really focused on is we've just scratched the surface with adoption. And so as I mentioned, we kind of got started and really struck a chord in fintech and word of mouth and clients working with other clients that saw these demos. And so we've had a lot of adoption in the fintech space. What's cool about Coast is we really are kind of industry agnostic. And so you ask kind of what's next. I would imagine, as we continue to iterate on the product and go deeper and make these enhancements for our clients that they're asking for, I think, we also will probably focus on other industries as well. We have some clients in healthcare, we have some in communications, we have some in e-commerce, and so I think we'll be able to kind of take a look and say let's focus on a certain industry before maybe we change the product.
And a corollary to that question, I guess, and related to one I asked earlier, when you do sell not to fintechs but to direct to financial institutions, sure. We talked about the sales cycle, but from an account management point of view or a sales point of view, is there a different skill set that you guys need? Is it the same people selling to both industries? Are there nuances there, or it doesn't really matter?
There's definitely nuances, I would say. Just in speaking the language, and I'm very blessed because right now, that's kind of the industry that I'm tackling.
You're steeped in it, right?
Because I've been in it for a while, right? We can speak the language, and we largely have probably worked with the same people at some point in the last decade, and so. I would say that, but there's a lot that I'm still learning. I'm still learning more about more the technical side, and then sometimes I'll be talking to the financial institutions, and maybe we can speak the same language on the product and really what they're trying to solve for and the value they're providing. But I'm still trying to get up to speed on maybe where they're at from a product and technical perspective. And so I would say yes, it always helps to have the background, but I think we're solving a real problem that everybody sees pretty quickly, and so it's nice to kind of have that common ground.
Kara, it's been wonderful talking to you. Good luck with Coast, and thanks for joining us on the Tearsheet podcast today.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Zach.